Hey there! Okay, welcome to part 7 of this video series where we go through the entire Enchiridion, and I'm using the translation How to Be Free by Professor A.A. Long, right? Epictetus's work. I am disturbing... Well, I am disturbing. I am enjoying this video series this much. It is disturbing how much fun I'm having with this. But it's not the videos, right? It's not the videos that I am enjoying, it's my thought that I'm enjoying the videos. Okay, now then, chapter 7. This one is a little tough, okay? When you are on a voyage and the boat is at anchor, if you disembark to get water, you may pick up a little shellfish and vegetable on the way, but you need to keep your mind fixed on the boat and keep turning around in case the captain calls. And if he does call, you must drop all those things to avoid being tied up and stowed on board like the sheep. That's how it is in life too. If you are given a little wife and child instead of a little vegetable and shellfish, that will not be a problem. But if the captain calls you, run to the boat and leave all those things without even turning around. And if you are old, never go far from the boat in case you are missing when he calls. Okay. The captain. Divine providence in the Stoics' mind. Okay, so this is a metaphor. Well, what are we saying here? It reminded me of a scene in the movie Heat, which is actually a fantastic movie in my mind. Very, very nice acting. Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, so it's kind of hard to go wrong with that. There is a line in that movie which I have to paraphrase because I simply do not remember it and I did not look it up, but it's something along the lines of Robert De Niro, who plays a criminal, tells another person something along the lines of, "You cannot have anything in the world, cannot get attached to anything in the world you're unable or unwilling to walk out of in under 5 minutes when the heat is around the corner." So in other words, you can get attached to all sorts of things, sure. But when divine providence calls, and you can interpret that in any way you like, you have to be able to let that go. I think that is what Epictetus is trying to say here. And that's hard. So is he saying that you should not love your wife and your children? Of course not. How would that make any sense? Is he saying that you should just be able to drop your wife and children like that? Of course not. How would that make sense? However, what he is saying, I think, is be mindful of your attachments. We have many attachments in life. We do. Think about it. Our families, our wives, spouses, husbands, children, our house, our car, our jobs, our collections or whatever it is we collect, our circle of friends, our colleagues, all these things. We're attached to them because we are invested in them. But that's why you have to be a little careful. If you're trying to be a Stoic, you are pursuing virtue. You are pursuing a life of eudaimonia, a good, rich, satisfying life, a life in the service of virtue. You're trying to be a virtuous, good person. Well, I would say that as a good person, you have to love your spouse and your children, your friends, and all that stuff. I don't think anyone would argue with that. But if you become so attached to them that you cannot let go, then there is a problem. If you become so attached to them that you cannot pursue your own virtue because you are giving up yourself in their service, that is a bad thing too. And that to me is the crucial theme in this chapter. Not sacrificing yourself and doing everything in the service of others, but be mindful of your attachments. We can get very attached to people, and that's normal. How would you be in a marriage and not love your partner? That doesn't make any sense. How would you be in any relationship and not appreciate or love the other person? That doesn't make sense. But you can become too attached. Then it may become a preoccupation that leads you to suffering. What if you are so in love with your partner that you believe that if anything were to happen to them, your life would be over? Well, that would be a very normal thought. Many people think that way. But then your partner dies. I'm sorry, this sounds a little morbid. I don't want to make this all super depressing. But think of that situation. Would that be terrible? Of course. No one would argue that that would be a very sad situation. Although a true Stoic would say, it's just a situation. You make it sad by how you think about it. Which may sound a bit too much of a hard-lining thing to say for some people. However, I see some virtue in that. You are, as I've said a couple times now in this series, you are in control of your thoughts, right? So if you become too attached and you start to think these things, you run into trouble. Why? Because you're starting to think bad thoughts. If this happens to my partner, if only this, if not this, oh, what if this? That will get in the way of virtue and eudaimonia. Your satisfying, nice, good, rich, virtuous life. So attachment, let's be fair, let's be real. Attachment is an important thing. Being in a relationship, a good, healthy relationship with another person is fantastic. Whether it is a romantic relationship or a friendship, it can be very enjoyable. And psychologically, I would have to say, go for it. Of course, we know, I get so enthusiastic, one day I'm going to knock myself out on these things. Of course it's good to be in a relationship. If that is a healthy relationship and both partners enjoy it, and again that could be romantic, but it could also just be a friendship, there's nothing wrong with that. If both people in that relationship enjoy it, that's a beautiful thing. And we know that it has good benefits. It has benefits for your health, your mental health, your psyche, your mind, your brain even. All of those things benefit from those relationships. But be mindful of that attachment, because the attachment can lead you astray, can lead you away from the path of virtue, can lead you away from the path of eudaimonia, because once you start to think the wrong things, become preoccupied with keeping that relationship. Oh, my dear, what if she, please don't let her leave me, or let him leave me, or do this or that. Now you've fallen into a thought trap, because what you are doing is not taking our good old friends, the preferred and dispreferred indifference, into account. Remember the indifference? Those things that you can pursue as long as they don't get in the way of your virtue, and as long as you understand that they are not within your control. Well, if you are a spouse, having a healthy relationship to a large degree is within your control, but not entirely, because it takes two to tango. So you can do all the things that you do to keep that relationship healthy, but if the other person is not cooperating, is not doing things to keep that relationship healthy too, then unfortunately the health of that relationship becomes a preferred indifferent. You may want to pursue it, but it is not entirely within your control. And that's the danger. So of course you can be in a relationship. Epictetus himself at some point adopted a child. So clearly he understood that these things relationships are important to us. But they are important and useful and pleasurable and nice when they stay healthy. And when you become too attached to someone, and they start to control your life or take over your life because you are so attached to someone, then you are sacrificing your identity. And any psychologist would tell you that that is not a good idea. You should not sacrifice your identity within a relationship. And if you're doing that, it's not a good relationship. And you probably should not be in it, hard as that may be. So, You may have all these things. You may be in these things. But you also have to be able, when the captain calls, walk away from them. If things do not go so well, you have to be able to walk away. And even if things are going well, make sure your investment in that relationship, the way you approach that relationship, does not get in the way of your own happiness. And I'm not saying anything really extreme here. I'm not saying that this only occurs when you completely lose yourself in a relationship. That is one thing that could happen, and that's a pretty extreme thing. But even very common thoughts, like I said before, what if something happens to my partner? What if he or she leaves me? Well, you will see that at that time. But don't forget what we talked about. Your partner leaving you, to a degree, is a dispreferred indifferent. You are not 100% in control. If you are terrible in that relationship, well, then you may not be pulling your weight in that relationship, and your partner may have to leave you. But if this is a matter of, say, thinking, I am so terrified that something will happen to my partner, yeah, that's a dispreferred indifferent. You must let go of those thoughts. That's not within your control. Look, I can walk out here tomorrow and die because I get hit by a car. And the same thing can happen to my partner. Again, this sounds very morbid, but that's just the truth. That's not within my control. This is something outside of my control. So all these thoughts, being preoccupied with staying in that relationship, or being preoccupied with, if something happens to my partner, what if this, what if that? That's dangerous. And it is at those moments you must heed the captain's call. And also be able to take a step back. So always reflect on these things. What am I doing? How am I behaving in this relationship? Does it make sense what I'm doing? And in a way it's the same thing with your children, right? You may have children, you want to give them the best you can give them and all those things. But they also have to develop and maybe move away, right? Important things to think about. Are you so invested that you cannot take a step back? I'm not saying abandoning your spouse and your children, for example. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, can you take a mental step back and say, maybe I should give them some space. Maybe I should let him or her do this or that, right? Because if you're too invested, you can't do that, you will suffer. So heed the captain's call. Okay, I hope I explained that well. I hope you found this useful. Next video coming up soon. I hope this was useful, and I'm glad to see you later. Bye bye.